Donald Trump recently unleashed yet another late-night social media rant, this time targeting the sovereign nation of Panama. His post carried veiled threats of taking control of the Panama Canal unless Panama offered more favorable terms to the United States. Trump's comments are yet another example of his reckless approach to diplomacy, alienating allies and destabilizing international relations. In recent months, Trump has escalated his rhetoric against traditional allies, including Canada, Mexico, and the European Union. He threatened tariffs on the EU for not buying American oil, showcasing a pattern of antagonistic behavior that weakens alliances built over decades. Now, with his focus turned to Panama, Trump's threats risk driving yet another nation closer to China's sphere of influence. To understand the broader implications of Trump's statements, it's worth examining Panama's geopolitical significance. Located at the junction of North and South America, Panama is home to the strategically critical Panama Canal, a vital artery for global commerce. The canal allows ships to travel between the Atlantic and Pacific Oceans, drastically reducing shipping times. The United States remains the canal's largest user, accounting for over 70% of its traffic. However, Panama's geopolitical position became more complex in 2017 when it shifted diplomatic recognition from Taiwan to China, establishing official ties with Beijing. This move occurred during Trump's presidency, raising questions about his inability to counter China's growing influence. China quickly capitalized on the opportunity, investing billions into Panama's economy and infrastructure. Trump's failure to foresee or counteract these developments underscores his lack of strategic vision. In his recent social media tirade, Trump described the Panama Canal as a vital national asset and accused Panama of jeopardizing U.S. economic and national security. He warned Panama not to let the canal fall into the wrong hands and claimed the United States would demand its return if conditions were not met. Such inflammatory language raises concerns about Trump's willingness to trample on Panama's sovereignty. Trump's post declared that the canal was a token of cooperation given to Panama, not for the benefit of other nations like China. He railed against Panama's growing ties with Beijing and framed the situation as a threat to U.S. naval and economic dominance. Yet, Trump conveniently ignored the fact that it was under his administration in 2017 that China cemented its presence in Panama. His inability to grasp basic diplomatic principles and counter China's expansionism during his presidency is now coming back to haunt U.S. interests. Despite Trump's bluster, his threats lack substance. Domestically, he couldn't even convince Republicans to tie an extension of the debt ceiling to the recent government funding bill. Internationally, his erratic behavior has eroded U.S. credibility. Allies and adversaries alike view his social media rants as hollow posturing rather than serious policy positions. Trump's approach stands in stark contrast to Teddy Roosevelt's speak softly and carry a big stick philosophy. Instead, Trump embodies a loud, empty bravado that diminishes America's global stature. China, meanwhile, has pursued a calculated, long-term strategy to expand its influence in Latin America. Through its Belt and Road Initiative, China has invested heavily in infrastructure projects, including roads, bridges, and ports. This has earned China goodwill in countries like Panama, where its financial support contrasts sharply with Trump's threats and insults. In December 2018, Chinese President Xi Jinping made a state visit to Panama, the first since diplomatic ties were established in 2017. China has since won contracts for major infrastructure projects near the canal, further strengthening its foothold. While Trump rails against these developments, China continues to consolidate power through strategic investments and diplomacy. Trump's obsession with social media and attention-grabbing posts exposes his lack of focus on real policymaking. Instead of engaging in serious negotiations, Trump wastes time attacking allies and threatening sovereign nations online. His behavior not only undermines U.S. credibility, but also hands China an opening to present itself as a stable, reliable partner. This pattern of recklessness is not limited to Panama. Trump's broader foreign policy has alienated allies and emboldened adversaries. His repeated attacks on Canada and Mexico, threats of tariffs against the EU, and cozy relationship with authoritarian leaders like Vladimir Putin paint a picture of chaos and incompetence. A recent statement from Canadian Member of Parliament Charlie Angus perfectly encapsulates the international response to Trump's antics. Angus emphasized that Canada would stand up to Trump's bullying and protect its interests. He pointed out that Trump's administration is rife with grifters, thieves, and thugs, making it difficult to take his threat seriously. Trump's fixation on Panama exemplifies his broader failure to understand global politics. While China methodically builds alliances and expands its influence, Trump alienates partners and undermines trust. His threats against Panama serve only to reinforce Chinese propaganda that portrays the U.S. as a hostile, imperialist power. China's strategy focuses on economic cooperation and development, providing infrastructure investments that make tangible improvements in countries like Panama. In contrast, Trump's approach is rooted in bluster and intimidation, offering no real solutions to the challenges facing U.S. foreign policy. The South China Morning Post highlighted Trump's latest rant, noting his warnings about Chinese influence near the Canal. Yet the reality is that China's presence in Panama has grown precisely because of Trump's failures during his presidency. By neglecting diplomatic engagement and allowing China to fill the vacuum, Trump created the conditions he now rails against. In conclusion, Trump's threats against Panama are a continuation of his chaotic and ineffective foreign policy. His inability to grasp diplomatic nuance, combined with his reliance on social media posturing, has damaged America's standing in the world. Meanwhile, China's strategic investments and disciplined approach to diplomacy continue to yield results, leaving the U.S. struggling to keep up. If Trump truly cared about protecting U.S. interests, he would focus on strengthening alliances, investing in infrastructure, and countering China's influence through meaningful policies rather than inflammatory tweets. Instead, his behavior undermines global stability and plays directly into the hands of America's rivals.